Hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Ultrascape podcast. I'm Becky Waters and I'm joined by my co-host Josh Ibbett. How are you doing, Josh?
Hello, how are you? I've got a croaky voice for some reason, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a second. So, what have we got coming up this month or this week,
Well,
Becky?
before you confess to how you got that, we'll talk a bit about what's happened at the Dells Divide and two Volcano Sprints since our last record, and we'll preview some upcoming races, including the TRAKA560, the Highland Trail 550, and the LostDot 101. But before we get onto that, Josh, you can probably talk us through your croaky voice and a few bags under our eyes.
Yes. We were at the Bespoke Handmade Bike Show at the weekend. So yeah, we were hosting. We were live. We were hosting the talks. So we've got some. Basically, we've recorded a few of them. So we're going to have some bonus episodes over the coming weeks when we sort them out. But yeah, who did we speak to? You had a really good interview with Veronica Sales.
Yeah, Veronica, people will know she finished the Accursed race in Grand Voyage, but she's more of a cycle tourist and spends half a year working, half a year touring. That's a very crude description of her. I actually found it really hard to introduce her, so I just asked her to introduce herself.
As you can find out when we get our act together and put these bonus ones out. And we also spoke to Graham, didn't we? Graham Rayburn, who is the lead designer at Albion. So that was really fascinating hearing all about Graham. Did you know? Well, you know because you were in the talk, but he actually invented the Festive 500, which was pretty cool to find out. And he talks about his kind of theories on designing clothing and fashion and loads of really interesting stuff. So that'd be worth it. And the final one was Ed and Theo, wasn't it, from Tailfin?
Yeah, another kind of product-based talk, really, about product design and how and why they design certain items or make incremental changes, including Josh is one of the research and development riders, the R&D riders, which is why you might see Josh with some white packs on. And that feedback from Josh is how they make a lot of the improvements on kit.
Not just me.
Sorry, yeah,
there's a lot of people.
It's the Josh and Josh division. You can call it that.
Yeah, and then also they did the really cool because the handmade bike show, bespoke handmade bike show. If you don't know, it's all kind of like the smaller boutique kind of bike brands or like little one-man band frame builders, things like that. And the theme is everything. It's kind of handmade. It's not come out of a big factory in Taiwan. And so yeah, a lot of the prototyping by both Albion and Tailfin is done in-house. So that's sort of their link to be in there. And they did a little collaboration. So they used loads of old or kind of samples to make some Tailfin bags. So like a Tailfin bag made out of a raincoat, a rain jacket is a pretty cool thing actually, isn't it?
Yeah. I said in the talk that it's probably one of the best looking Tailfin bags I've ever seen. Their stuff's quite stealth and quite sleek, whereas suddenly it was bright with the kind of burnt orange Albion colours and some blues. And
I never knew I needed a insulated down frame bag into the show, but there we go. I think they might have made a rod for their own back there, and everyone's going to start asking for them. But anyway, so we're going to have basically, there's enough for like probably each one of their own episode because there were like 45 minute talks each one. So we'll be bringing those out, I guess, over the coming month or so. So yeah, that's a bit of a bonus for all our listeners. But before we get into the bulk of this podcast, we're getting into race season, aren't we, Becky? There's so much coming up in the next few weeks. So we're going to be upping the regularity of the podcast now to sort of every other week, as we did last year. But we're doing that with the support of Redshift, as always. They're our title sponsor. And yeah, fantastic products, aren't they, Becky? I didn't notice my pedal adapters. Oops. My pedal adapters were on my bike when I went to Bespoke, and then they disappeared. Where did they disappear to, do you think?
The wind.
The wind onto your bike.
Yeah, they slotted onto my bike. It's about the only thing on your bike that will fit onto my bike. But because we were both of us had cycled across London to get there, so we're in our cleats. But when we were there, we obviously weren't wearing cycling shoes. We were just wearing trainers, and then did a few short rides with the trainers on. It then meant you had a great idea to put those pedals on, and I had an even better idea to steal them. So
yeah, they're surprisingly good actually. They just clip into an SPD pedal. They're kind of. I'll be honest. When I first saw Tailfin, wrong brand, Redshift, introduce these, I thought it was potentially a bit of a gimmick. But then you use it, well, as you did, and they're really useful, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they're out. So yeah, Redshift's got really good products. They've also finally released their flat bars. the top shelf handlebars. You've got the drop ones on your bike, haven't you? Still haven't put your bar tape on yet, though, as I noticed on your bike. But they've just released these as well. So these are kind of like the really nice swept risers. You had them on your bike because it was a bit low at the front, and it basically meant you could ride it again. Now you're not a roadie winning road races with your low slam stem.
Don't need to worry about aerodynamics when you don't ride more than 30 kilometers in an hour and a half.
Exactly. So anyway, loads of really good stuff from Redshift. So thanks as always for sponsoring the podcast and making it happen. We've got a little discount code as well, so I'll put that on the screen. And today's episode sponsor is Seas to Summit. So I've been using their sort of sleeping bags and sleeping pads and cooking pots. They're worth checking out. Loads of cool little camping things, and yeah, so they're supporting this one as well. We've got a 15% discount code for those guys. So I'll pop that up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, or down below in the show notes on wherever you're listening to it. And what else? I've got so much to talk about. The merch is here. Finally, Becky. Here they are. I was hoping to get you some at the weekend, but obviously when I got home, they were waiting on Tuesday, not the show. So we've got caps, 2 colours, a nice colourful one with the Ultrascape logo on the front. They're made by Fractal, so they're kind of really lightweight running caps. And I got these because you can like put them in bikepacking bags and they're not going to lose their shape. So there's a colourful one, and there's a nice, like a more subtle black one with the logo on the front for when you've got to be smart with your cap on. So yeah, they are available as well. I'll put the little link up to the little web shop. And also, it's been a busy month. I've made another little zine because the last one sold out, and everyone kept asking me for it. So yeah, episode 1, that was episode 0 before. We're on episode 1 now. That's also on the web shop. And that's just loads of photos. Some photos from Japan when I went a couple of years ago. These photos are just sat basically on a hard drive, and it was a bit of a waste. So I printed them. So I'm very happy to have those out there. And some shots from Morocco, including when I got stung by a bee. So you can see my swollen face, which Becky, you'll find very amusing.
It's my favourite. The landscapes are nice, but that one was my favourite.
Yeah, and then some, just various things I've done. So that's available on the little web shop too. So I'll put the link up. And yeah, anything anyone buys is a great way to support the podcasts. Thanks in advance. And shall we get on with the with the bulk of the podcast now, Becky? What have we got first?
Yeah, if we move on to more of the news roundup of what's happened since the last record, record being the the primary word, there've been a couple of Grand Depart races, but we've also seen some records taken. And somewhat surprisingly, well, I felt like it was quite surprising. I didn't feel like there was much build-up or hype to Alex McCormack's 7-day record.
No, I thought I'd heard kind of a rumour he might be thinking about it. So Alex, so he's just signed for the new Canyon all-train team. So yeah, he's kind of proper pro, big contract. Well, a contract, actually paid to ride his bike. That's his job. And I guess he's got more time, obviously too much time on his hands, because he's set out to break the 7-day distance record. So he basically, I think it had been set before in Florida or somewhere like that. There's a cycle track in Florida, which is obviously very flat, and it's pretty good weather most of the time. And I think that's where a lot of these kind of like long distance records have been set, like the week record and the month record. But Alex, he decide to do it in Koblenz, Germany. So obviously riding for Canyon. Koblenz is where Canyon are based. I think it's the Rhine River runs through there. And there's kind of it's obviously very flat. And he could do I think it's like 150k loop. And he'd just do laps of that on a time trial bike. So fair play to him. And I guess the weather wasn't kind to him. So he was up, and then I think he really suffered and really had to dig in. I think he got the classic Sherman's neck for too much time in the time trial position. So there's they're not funny photos, but there's photos at the end where he's just got bungee on the back of his aero helmet, just holding his head up so he can see where he's going. And I think he really had to dig in. So yeah, fair play to Alex. So he covered 3,826.47 kilometers in 7 days, which is 2,377.66 miles. So he averaged over 18 hours in the saddle daily, and he only broke the previous record by 12.66 kilometers, which isn't much over a week, is it?
No, it's not. And at that speed, it's less than half an hour. It must be.
Yeah. I think it was really tight, wasn't it? So his final push he basically did the final 727k non-stop. Yeah. And he looked broken. He looked broken about 3 days ago. If you follow on on his social media, and he reckons these are the stats that sort of they put out from Canyon put out after the event. It was like 14,000 calories per day. That's a lot of eating, isn't it?
Impossible.
Yeah. Well, obviously not, 'cause he did it. But
Um,
yeah, I think there might well be a bit of a film coming out about that at some point. But also, we kind of heard at the weekend that someone else is going to set out in the next couple of weeks to try and break it. So
did we?
yeah. Oh, someone told me at Bespoke. To be honest, there was a lot of conversations at Bespoke. Could well have been in a pub as well. So I can't remember exactly who it was with. But yeah, I did hear that someone else within Europe was going to have a crack at it in the next
Oh,
month or
right.
so.
Now, I think you might, unless there was someone else there, I met a guy, Alex Kowalski, who's he's trying to do as many countries within a 7-day period, which might have been that. So I think he's
It
aiming
was
for,
quite late by that point.
yeah,
The details are quite vague.
I think he's aiming for about 20 countries. So that's kind of Central Europe down to the Balkans,
Yeah,
which was quite cool actually, because that's a big route to design. He's a TCR veteran, a multi-time
yeah,
veteran, so I think quite enjoys the routing. But it's somewhat different to a 7-day record where you're doing laps of a 150-kilometer course.
definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a detail that obviously got blurred in the pub. So moving on quickly, Adrian Lechty, we didn't mention him last episode, but we've been following his Africa end-to-end record attempts. The reason for that was he got himself in the spot bother, didn't he? So essentially, he ended up getting arrested in Cameroon. The details are quite thin on the ground, but I think he basically took a photo in the wrong place and had a bit of a misunderstanding and ended up being detained by the local police force. And no one really knew where he was for a week or so. So yeah, we kind of had a bit of info, but we were asked not to say anything really, just because it was a bit sensitive. But thankfully, Adrian got released. And rather than coming home after 2 weeks in detention, he decided just to carry on and do the record. So, I mean, you have to give it to him. So Adrian carried on after that. I think he caught malaria as well while in prison. So I think it was a bit rough in the second half. But Adrian's not really a guy that scratches races, and that includes Africa end-to-end record attempts. So he was actually the first person to ever complete it, which says something about the route, and also it's as much as a just a logistical challenge as much as anything. There's some areas which you need quite a lot of permissions to go through, and I think certain, had to lose a couple of days just to chase visas and fixes and things like that. But he did it. So yeah, I mean, that's a huge congratulations to Adrian for that, especially given everything he went through on the way. So yeah, hopefully we can try and get him on the podcast at some point. So that was 17,280 kilometers ridden, 116,000 meters climbed, and it's 17 countries. So it was Tunisia, started in Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Cameroon, where things went a little bit south for him. Then the Republic of Congo and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, Namibia, and finally South Africa. So he's just waiting for. It was a Guinness World Record he was going for. So he's submitted all his evidence and everything like that. So he's just waiting for that to be validated. But yeah, he's the first person to complete it, and yeah, that's pretty impressive, I think, given everything he went through. So yeah, huge congratulations to Adrian.
And that's all of the records that we'll talk about. Moving on to the grander parts, starting with the unknown race. We now know a lot more about that race.
You know what happened and where they were.
Yeah, where they went. It started in Reus in Spain, which people recognize as the start location of Convoy. It's near Girona type country. It was eventually 900 kilometers, or approximately 900 kilometers. The quirk with this event being that riders are only given the start and the finish location before the race. 1 hour before the start, they get the first checkpoint, and then once they arrive at the first checkpoint, there's information about the next checkpoint. So it's a free route event with no ability to plan. So it's eventually 900 kilometers, and this was the 4th edition, and it was the first dry edition. So they've had it in other locations like Tuscany and further north in Europe. So finally going to Spain, there was no rain on the plane.
All in the mountains, though.
Yes, there were. As we just Googled, had a little geography lesson before the record, and the mountains that they went through, which were just southwest of Reus, were considered part of the Iberian system. So they were, there were 6 checkpoints. And actually, the fourth checkpoint was moved to a lower location due to dangerous wind and snow conditions to ensure rider safety. So, like fairly cold, serious conditions. And the organizer actually noted that they were the third event this year to have been impacted by extreme weather conditions. We talked about Grand Guanche gravel, was it? Being
Yeah,
cancelled?
it's gravel cancelled. But it's just been like pretty grim across Europe, hasn't it?
Mm.
I mean, I was in northern Morocco and Portugal, Spain and Portugal in January, and oh yeah, it just rained every single day in Spain and Portugal.
Mm.
And I think all the the Mediterranean islands like Majorca, they've had bad weather. I think it's just a weather system that's stuck over the jet stream's been all off, hasn't it? Even Adrian, when he started his record in like the North of Africa, he had rain and snow in Angola and Senegal, and I think maybe even Morocco. It didn't dry out till he got into the Sahara south of the Atlas Mountains.
Okay.
So yeah, been a rough winter in Europe, but it could just be the pattern going forward now, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the people at the unknown race, talking about the riders, we saw Christoph Strasser win, one of, if not the favorite. He finished in 42 hours and 55 minutes. And second rider was a woman called Elodie Roberts. She was only 2 hours behind him. And the next woman was Ada Haas in sixth overall, in 48 hours and 39 minutes, which is brilliant. It's one of we rarely see a woman finish in the top three overall, and to come second to a rider like Christoph Strasser is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, especially given his Palmeiras and everything he's achieved. That's nothing really, is it? It's
Mm.
a tight finish. It's great to see.
And then behind Elodie and Ada, we had Maxi Unger in 53 hours and 45 minutes, and Sarah Boslet in 56 hours. They were the first four women, and they finished in the top 20 overall. And that, again, is quite unusual. I don't know whether it's a testament to the unknown race, because it's hard riding and the men in the race are certainly fast, but I wonder if it's to do with the unknown race. One of the reasons they don't release the control points before the race is to prohibit any pre-planning. So it doesn't really matter how much spare time you have before the race. You can't really plan your way to a good ride, whereas you very much can do that in TCR.
I think it just rewards being like methodical during the race as well, and kind of
Mm.
not just getting full of testosterone and smashing yourself as maybe guys might do more than women potentially.
And being quite calm in that uncertainty, or even kind of thrive in it, I guess.
Well, I think the results say it all there, really, don't they?
Mm.
It's good to see, but then we'll come on to some races later on as well, like the LostDot 101, and then you just see that I think the women's side of the sport is definitely starting to grow, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And Elodie was now one to watch, and Ada. In fact, Elodie actually finished 3 hours ahead of Ada this year, and 3.5 hours last year. So they're quite they've got a little sister in arms, gentle competition going on there. So hopefully we'll see them at a few more races soon.
Yeah, definitely. Elsewhere, talking of bad weather, there's an event called Dale's Divide. It rained quite heavily.
Have you
When I say
tried that?
rain, there was a named Storm. Storm Dave came in. He was a bit angry. But yeah, Dale's Divide is actually it's my first time at the event. Actually, it's really seemed to be like a coming together of the UK kind of ultra scene. There's so many faces, and really good to see so many people and catch up. I guess it's on the Easter weekend, which is normally like a long weekend, 4-day weekend. So there's not really any excuses time-wise not to go. And it's a coast to coast and back across the UK, starting in Arnside, crossing the Yorkshire Dales, heading out through York on the sort of flatter lands through the Yorkshire Wolds to Scarborough, then back over the North York Moors, back over the Dales, and finish in Arnside. Sounds easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, when you
But
put
there
it
was
like that, Josh.
yeah, unfortunately, there's a massive tailwind out and horrendous weather on the first part. Then it was sunny. And then when it's too good to be true, when it's just beautiful morning and it's really calm, but there's a storm in the forecast. So yeah, the calm before the storm was nice, and then Storm Dave hit. So yeah, and it was won by Alistair Brownlee, Olympic or former Olympic triathlon champion. I think he's won a couple of Ironmans as well, and he just basically disappeared. He was only I think it was less than an hour off Angus Young's FKT, which, given the conditions and the weather, was it's just testament to how strong a rider he is. So yeah, I nearly took him out at the start as well. I probably think I'm a right muppet. Found the limit of my grip and my tyres. When Dickie Hibbett came by on his mountain bike and I tried to chase him and quickly realised that maybe I shouldn't be doing that. So yeah.
He probably thought of you as we all think of triathletes on group rides.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I basically nearly took him out. Had to shout because I couldn't stop. I think he might have shouted at me a bit. Then I pinballed off a fence and then thought I was going to save it and then binned it right in front of everyone within the first half hour. But there we go. So Alistair Brownlee won. Donnie Campbell, he came in second. He actually had a real strong finish. And then it was George Sales and Adam Palin. They were, I think, a minute apart. It's essentially a sprint finish. Dickie Hibbett was fifth. Obviously, he won the UK Triple Crown last year. I think he sliced his tyre, so it's quite funny because I wouldn't have been too far behind, and in the morning I just kept seeing like dots of sealant along the trail, like a marker, and I wondered who it was. It turns out it was Dickie. And then Dan Clark, that was his first ultra actually. Dan's a really strong rider. He where I ended up finishing with him. Well, he was about a minute ahead of me. So he was sixth and seventh, and then Kitten Nisbet eighth. Bryn Appleton ninth, and then the first woman riding in a pair with Ashley Cordingley was Kerry McPhee, and so she was 10th, and then the first solo woman was Justynia Jagzog. Apologies, Justynia, for my Polish pronunciations aren't any better. She was 16th overall and first woman, so that's a really strong ride from her. But then unfortunately she got a bike stolen on the way home in Leeds somewhere, so that was really sucked for her. But the kind of community came together, and I think they found it a couple of days later, and all her bags, were dumped in a park, and it all kind of got back to her. But basically, she was stood there in a petrol station. Everything went. Her house keys. She had a phone and the clothes she was wearing, and had to travel back home to Poland like that. But thankfully, her bike was found. But yeah, just got to be careful, unfortunately. And yeah, it was quite a tough race. I think it was a 50% scratch rate. I can see why. It was grim.
I wonder with the 50% scratch rate, as bad as the weather was, Dales Divide doesn't have a like a selection criteria, does it? So you do get a lot of rookies at Dales Divide, and that can push up the scratch rate, especially if the weather is bad.
Yeah, they do have like the short options as well, and I think basically the weather was so bad, a lot of people just decided to sack it off. And there was like train strikes over the weekend as well, or engineering work. So normally it's quite good because you can get back across the country from anywhere fairly easily. So that might have been a factor. But yeah, you didn't want to be out there unless you had to. I mean, the front sort of, basically probably the front 10 just about got away with it. I got stuck by the storm on the coming off the Cam High Road, which wasn't ideal. The front few missed it, but everyone else would have been going up sort of the over Catterick and sort of up onto the Dales again in the full-on force of that storm. So
you weren't tempted by the barn of freshly sheared wool I tipped you off about?
I didn't see it.
It's all I'll ever look for when I'm in the Dales now.
Yeah, I was thinking about it at times though, but I didn't need that temptation. So anyway, that was the Dales Divide. So yeah, it really was a good event. Definitely would recommend it. But yeah, just check the forecast. I think two of the worst storms I've ever been in have been on the Dales. So yeah, Silk Road's got nothing on Dales.
Yeah. Elsewhere in Europe, we had two Volcano Sprint. It's somewhat ongoing. We're recording on the 30th of April, and it's the finishers party or the pizza party tonight. And that is two Volcano Sprint is Juliana Boering's race. She was one of the early holders of the women's round the world record, and she's designed a race in her home country from Mount Vesuvius in Naples to Mount Etna on the Isle of Sicily. It's a 1,220 kilometer route, mostly all road. There's a few broken Italian roads, but it's not quite a mixed terrain or gravel route. We've had our podium in. That's Bruno Vicht in 2 days, 11 hours and 23 minutes. Behind him, Adam Bialek, 2 days, 12 hours and 10 minutes, and Anatol Naimi in 2 days, 12 hours and 55 minutes. So not much time between them really. 40 minutes. Yeah, 40 minutes between each of them. So pretty tight. Adam Bialek actually won in 2024 and Bruno finished third. So they've lined up against each other quite a few times already. They seem to be attracted to the similar races and they're all of a similar standards. So they've had a few tete-a-tetes and we'll see a few more this year. So they're lined up against each other for 4 more times this year. And the next time is actually at the Mittelgebirge Classic in Germany, or Germany, France, and Switzerland this year. And that'll be in less than 3 weeks. So they're pretty familiar with each other by now. And it's quite nice to see that because they'll start to learn how each other races and what decisions they might make at certain points. And that can then influence their own decision making, maybe. We don't actually see many people learn each other's racing styles in bikepacking very much. And certainly not race against them enough to be able to do anything with what they do learn about them. The first woman was Bianca Brambilla. She came in 3 days, 19 hours and 23 minutes, and we're still waiting for a second women's finisher. So that was to Volcano Sprint in Italy. It's normally later in the year. It's normally an October race, and it was obviously spring this time. So we'll see whether Juliana does anything with that change of time of year.
Yeah, it always caught people out, didn't it, with the weather in October?
Massively.
I think everyone kind of assumed that it'd be relatively warm, but actually there's some pretty high mountains there, and yeah, I've always heard that it's like warm in the day, but absolutely freezing in the night. And there's been a few years. Do you remember when like Uber and people like that were racing, and then like the top 3 or 4 just scratched because they got so cold?
Yeah, it was
And
a
didn't take
classic
enough
race
kit.
where you'd see people buying household items or
When Andrew won,
stuff.
didn't he?
Yeah, he
It was
did.
really bad, and he just kind of obviously took all the right kit with him, and all the guys going with nothing ended up paying the price for it. But yeah, we'll see where that ends up on the calendar next year.
So although it's not warm, it is one of the races with the best food. And we've already seen a couple of photos of riders stuffing arancini into their face, which seems to be a bit of a rite of passage for
It always
racers.
feels like you're cheating when you're racing Italy. It's just coffee on tap, pizza on tap, pasta on tap, snacks on tap.
Yeah.
Unlike the Highland Trail.
Absolutely, exactly. The Highland Trail is we'll move on to the previews of the podcast. And the Highland Trail 550, that's 550 miles, starts on the 9th of May. Josh mentioned about the resupplies there, and getting your resupplies right on the Highland Trail is paramount. There are a couple of places open, they're not open all day, and getting there at the right time or making good decisions when you have access to a resupply, it can absolutely break a person's race.
It's one of those events as well that with like the sort of the faster times, they tend to mean that you're going through a lot of the towns when they're closed. So almost you get like 2 or 3 resupplies in that top 20 on the last the last 3 or 4 years pace has been similar to that. And it's almost like the midfield gets kind of the best options, but then if you're slower, you lose them again. So it's timing's a key on that race.
And so that's the Highland Trail up in the Scottish Highlands. And for many people will know that that's quite a weather dependent race. And it's been very varied over the past few years. I think I had pretty good weather when I did it a couple of years ago with a few storms, but last year it was awful. They didn't see any blue sky, I think, for a couple of days. We saw quite a high scratch rate last year. This year things are looking okay. Well, at least compared to the south of England right now, which is glorious blue sunshine for the rest of time, I hear. Highlands looking, I'm hearing people talk about the low pressure up there. So it should be stable, but it might be a little bit cold and wet, but it shouldn't be too stormy.
But either way, it's a Highland Trail, you're going to get wet feet. So
yeah,
it's never fully dry, is it?
Yeah, there's a part of the route called the Path of 1,000 Puddles. We should give it away.
Your clue is in the name.
And you can't talk about the Highland Trail without talking about records. And the current records they stand from Lee Craigie. She holds the women's record from her ride in 2018. That's 3 days, 20 hours and 53 minutes. Whereas the men's is Alex McCormack, who we previously mentioned with the 7-day record. He raced in 2024, 3 days, 5 hours and 30 minutes. And he took hours off of the time. Taking it closer to 3 days than 4 days was a huge step for the record. And I say we're always wrong, Josh, but I think it's unlikely anyone will take his record for a long time.
Yeah. And that was if I remember correctly, I think that was the year I did it, and it was really quite dry. So yeah, conditions do play quite a part there. Also, having a 400-watt threshold is quite handy for that kind of time, but it's not something I'd actually know about, so it's irrelevant for me and probably most people in the world. So who's going to break those records or bother them this year? I think it's funny, we've got a couple of races that we're going to preview, and the women's fields are looking more exciting than the men's at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across the board, really.
So the women's record, well, again, the route changes every year, and there's a part in addition to this route which a friend recce'd, and she reckons it adds an hour to an hour and a half, and that could easily be the difference between a record and no record. So yeah, we'll see. In the women's field, the riders who are probably the most competitive is Alice Lemkis. She won the women's race in 2023. She's lived up in the Highlands for a couple of years and has now moved over to Knoydart, which is a peninsula. So she's very au fait with the Scottish weather, and she wouldn't be too rattled by it. She's also, her partner is Lee Craigie, so she has a lot of support from the right women.
I did see actually that Alan put out that there'd been a couple of women's spots opened up, and Lee was kind of showing some social media interest.
Oh, he said to me that he's had two women apply, but none of them will trouble the leaders. So I don't know if he's trying to throw me off the scent there.
Yeah, it was only a thing I saw on the internet, but so hey, I'm sure Lee and Alice would have a good race.
Yeah, we'd love to see it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Hannah Simon, she's a woman who we've had on the podcast before. She's a rookie to the Highland Trail, but she's had top 10s at Silk Road. She finished first woman there, and at Arizona Trail Race. She's a typical kind of trail race. That's Arizona, Colorado, and Tour Divider. The big open landscapes don't scare her. It's just the Scottish part of this that's new to her, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just the sort of the local knowledge and just knowing the resupplies, because a lot of people on this list have done it numerous times, which is a big advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Hannah's really strong, so I'm pretty sure she'll be up there.
Yeah. Kerry McPhee is again one of the real favourites. She's won it before 2024, where she was 6th overall, and she was the second woman to go under 4 days, so tailing Lee Craigie, but she didn't take Lee's record that year. She scratched last year due to she had a bike washed away, which
That's how wet it was.
Exactly. That was quite dramatic.
Luckily, she didn't get washed away down the stream as well. But she was, we talked about it in the pod. She was like, well, she was crossing and she lost her balance and the bike just went. And they found it. Was it a couple of K down the river? The
Yes,
farmer
still
found
floating.
the bike.
Testament to her restrap kit, wasn't it?
And the tracker was still working too.
She's actually raced the Commonwealth Games for Scotland on the mountain bike, and she's won the Three Peaks cyclocross race. So she's a very capable off-road rider, and she'd be one of the favourites to take Lee's record. And the next rider is Molly Weaver. She scratched it a couple of years ago. She's a former pro roadie, but she transitioned over to bikepacking and long distance stuff a couple of years ago. Her top finish is 8th overall at Trans-Pyrenees in 2024. And last year, I don't believe she did a Grand Depart, but she did her own ride. She took the record on the British coastline ride, so riding the perimeter of Great Britain in 21 days, 10 hours and 48 minutes. She did that fully supported, I believe.
Yeah, she had like a camper. And I don't know if those records are easier or harder. There's no kind of like slacking, is there, when you've got someone sort of forcing food in and keeping you going? You've got no excuses. So in some ways, it might be a little bit harder. But yeah, that was a big ride, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, that was massive and really interesting. So she's moved from professional road racing to, she did a lot of off-road racing a couple of years ago, then back to the coastline attempts again on the road. And now she's back to the Highland Trail. So it's a lot of moving around, kind of a jack of all trades type rider. So we'll see how she gets on.
And then finally, Jade Simpson Field as well. She feels like Jade does it every single year.
I know. Yeah, she raced it, I think, the first time when I did it in 22, and she was doing it on a gravel bike. And it was both inspiring and quite humbling to have someone near you on a gravel bike.
Yeah.
But she's finished it on a proper bike again. I think she did it on a hardtail in 23, and then we'll see what she turns up on this year. She'll probably be on a full sus.
Yeah,
even though she will not admit that a gravel bike is not the right bike for the Highland Trail. But she's never done it again on a gravel bike.
Wow, it says it all, doesn't it? So that's the Highland Trail, for the women's field at the Highland Trail. The men's field, it's not actually looking as deep as the women's field. I guess the standout is Justinus Leveka. So he's going up for his first time on the Highland Trail. Again, super strong. He's not afraid of the conditions. Obviously, finishing the Iditarod 350 earlier in this year. I think I was like his parents live in the UK, or his mum lives in the UK, so we ride quite often when he's around, and we're out riding. And I think his perception of what bad weather is has changed after hiking across Alaska. So I'm not sure we'll be phased by Scotland, but again, not super experienced on the route itself. A couple of other riders, though, quite a few actually. Well, the rest on our watch list, we're all at Dales Divide, and most of them are doing the UK Triple Crown, I think. So Ash accordingly, obviously we mentioned finishing first pair, and they were 10th overall with alongside Kerry McPhee. So obviously they're both going really well. So he's a name to watch. Noel Shannon, he ended up scratching Dales Divide, but I was sort of up around him on the way out. But he's done Highland Trail before, and he's going for the UK Triple Crown, as is Ash. Bryn Appleton, he was 9th at Dales Divide. Again, he's done Highland Trail 550 before and going for the UK Triple Crown, so another name to watch. And Harry Walton, he ended up actually scratching, but I rode with him most of the way around, or saw him quite a lot on Dales Divide. So I think that'll be his first time on Highland Trail. But again, another name to keep an eye out on the men's field. So that race starts next weekend as we record this, doesn't it? Which is a bit earlier than normal. I think Alan's, has he moved it for 2 weeks or 1 week compared to the normal start date?
Yeah, it feels more like 2 weeks. I always thought it was the end of May, because I remember when I did it. I hadn't been paid that month, so I knew I was going to have to bivvy out every night.
To be honest, though, in Scotland, there's not that many options, so you probably didn't save anything. So yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that. And then elsewhere, I mean, well, as we record this on Thursday, it's the day before the TRAKA560, which is, well, the TRAKA is a huge event now. Like I think it's the biggest gravel event in Europe, and they introduced the TRAKA560 last year. I was lucky enough to go out there, and then they've got the 360, and then the TRAKA 200 and the 100, and I think there's a 50 as well. So it's kind of like a gravel event based in Girona in sort of Catalonia, which kind of caters for everyone, and the start list is getting bigger and bigger in the 560. There's some pretty big names there. So the route basically goes kind of north from Girona, or northwest from Girona, and then touches on the foothills of the Pyrenees. So there's a couple of pretty big passes in there. And then you head back down towards the coast, and you end up rejoining the route that's used by the TRAKA 360. So some riders will get loads of fast gravel riders blasting by them the next day. I think the winning time last year was Victor Bozzoni in just about 24 hours. And I think most of the top, I was 15th, so about 28, 29 hours. So kind of gives you a feeling. There's not big gaps. You could see riders most of the time. So yeah, a fast and a hard race. And when you look at the field as well, it's gonna be even harder. It's going to be a hard race in both the men's and the women's. So some key names I've picked out. Bear in mind, this is quite a broad event now. A lot of people going up sort of the scale of the gravel racing, and ended up kind of in the TRAKA560, which I guess is on the shorter end of the ultracycling world, but it's an overnight race as well, so it's normally at least 24 hours. So I guess that means it does definitely is more than a gravel race. A very long gravel race, very short ultra race, whichever way you want to look at it. But you get quite interesting mixed fields in it. So on the women's side of things, Cara Dixon, she's been top 10 overall twice at Badlands. Seems to go really well at this kind of distance. Cynthia Carson, obviously the fastest woman at the Atlas Mountain Race earlier in this year, and she lives in Girona as well. So there's a lot of local. She's second or third last year in the TRAKA. I can't remember, but she's ridden it before as well. Heather Jackson has come over from the USA, so she's won Unbound XL in the past, and also 7 Ironman wins, which is quite impressive. Shows definitely a strong athlete. This is where it starts to get more interesting. Jana Kessenheimer, 2 times TCR winner. So it'd be interesting to see how she goes. And she's not done an awful lot off-road, but she's a pretty competent gravel rider. And obviously the parcours they had in TCR last year are way harder than any of the terrain on the TRAKA. It's all fairly fast-rolling gravel tracks. Justynia Jarksok, I still can't pronounce your name properly, Justynia, sorry. Twice in an episode. So we heard about her obviously taking the win at Dales Divide.
Yeah. Should we send her a bike log?
That's the thing about the TRAKA. You won't need to get off your bike, just do it in one.
There you go.
Because I think last year it was a bank holiday. So everything was shut on Friday, so you can actually resupply. Although they have moved it to start on Friday this year, so maybe that's why. So there might be a few more options on the weekend. So yeah, Senior, she'll sure be up there. Another woman that's quite well known, Lael Wilcox. Have you heard of her? So Lael is on the start line for the TRAKA, which is really cool. And it's not too long till she starts her round the world record attempt in Chicago. I think it's end of June, early July, I think she was doing it. So that's definitely one for us to keep an eye on this year. Marie Moldenhauer, we had her on the podcast at the end of last year, and we heard all about her knee injuries as well. So this is her first basically race back since her second knee surgery, and she's riding on the Canyon ATR team now as well. Still a doctor, but kind of on a pro team. I'm wondering if that's going to help her kind of level up. But yeah, she's quite the talent, isn't she? So it'd be interesting to see how her recovery's gone and how she sort of how she sits in that field, which is looking pretty world class.
The only reason that you hope she goes well is so that you have an excuse for the fact she rode away from you at Atlas Mountain.
Next rider, yeah, right. Drop me like a stone, I think it's fair to say. But she's a pure climber, so I'd expect her to be really right up there at the front overall out of everyone, because there's some big climbs, so like half-hour climbs, 2 or 3 half-hour climbs in that first section. So yeah, we'll see how Mariah gets on, and let's see how the comeback's going. Svenja Betts won last year, and she was on the start list, but I think I saw a post somewhere that she's basically got loads of university work on, so she's decided to focus on that rather than defend her title. So there's going to be a new women's winner this year at the TRAKA. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see who it is. And then on the men's side of thing, we'll start with Angus Young. He's won a couple of Highland Trail 550s. It's still got the Dales Divide FKT. I always get muddled up whether him or Alex has that or the Highland Trail, but I think it's Angus with the Dales Divide FKT.
Yeah,
they seem to swap FKTs quite regularly on the UK events, don't they? And then last year he set that on the other end of the scale, the Eastern Divide FKT. Was probably almost 5,000 miles as opposed to 500k. Yeah, and Angus has been he gave up work tail end last year, did a lot of traveling with his partner, with his wife Meg. So it'd be interesting to see if he's managed to kind of level up. Now he's got sort of all the energy to focus on it. So yeah, you can't rule Angus out an event that long. Chris Melman, again he's not a joiner local, but he is a joiner at the moment from the US. So he was 4th last year, 3rd at Badlands last year, 10th at Unbound XL last year. So he's proven in this kind of distance event. And then if you watch the Atlas Mountain race, we spoke about it. It was 4th in the Atlas this year. So he's starting to sort of transition towards these longer events. Another Atlas everyone now going forward has featured quite heavily in the Atlas over the past years. So Ole Bjorn Smithgel, sorry for my Norwegian pronunciations. He was actually 2nd at Atlas and a kind of a key protagonist. He actually led going into the last day, but didn't quite hold it together. But again, I think he's come from the sort of more of the gravel events, so he should be one to watch at this sort of distance race. Rob Britton, again, didn't go all his way in Atlas, had a bit of a knee injury, but he was up there early on and then kind of faded and sort of finished though. So he won Unbound XL last year. He's won Badlands. He's also been 2nd in the TRAKA560. So yeah, he's got to be a key favourite there. So it'd be good to see how Rob goes. Robin Gemperle, have you heard of him, Becky? A Tour Divide FKT holder, TCR winner, and yeah, he's a bit of a racer at heart. Obviously, got that kind of cross country racing background that we heard about when he was on the podcast last year. Oh, we won the Silk Road Mountain Race as well. Forget that. So yeah, I think he was saying, I can't remember if he said on the podcast or when we were chatting off air last year when we spoke to him, he was going for the TRAKA560, Unbound XL, and the Badlands this year. And I think we might well see him on the TCR start list as well. So yeah, this is the start of Robin's season, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see how he goes. Victor Bozzoni, last year's winner, already won Atlas this year, won TCR last year. So it seems to be a bit of the rising star in the ultra racing scene at the moment. He's still only 24, which is pretty mad to think he's won all that stuff. He's the defending champion. And then Thomas Beret, kind of a favourite of ours, really. We always end up mentioning him. He's been 5th. He was 5th at Atlas this year. I think he's been 5th a couple of times at Atlas, been 3rd at Atlas. And yeah, he's really just, he's kind of, I think he's just such a strong competitor. Like, I don't think anyone out there gives it as much as Thomas does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be really, really good to see how he lines up. And he's a dad now as well, so at least he's got an excuse.
He always strikes me as quite well prepared and methodical.
He's very, very,
Yeah.
yeah. He's actually got a really good Substack
I was just
about
gonna
his
say,
training and everything. And he goes into a lot of detail about stuff.
even I find it quite interesting, and I'm not I mean, I almost fell asleep when you and Adam Palin were talking over at Bespoke, but even I find his stuff interesting, and he also does a few, like, slightly more opinion descriptive pieces. His Substack's brilliant.
Yeah,
Really good.
yeah. So yeah, definitely be good to see how Thomas gets on at the TRAKA560.
Mm.
So that starts. Well, it depends if I get my finger out and get this edited. So it might have started already, or it starts tomorrow. So yeah, you'll have to figure out that after the podcast, after we've recorded. What else have we got happening this month, Becky?
Well, elsewhere in Spain, we've got the inaugural LostDot 101. So that's from LostDot, the organisers of Transcontinental, Transpyrenees, and the Accursed race. This starts on May the 10th. It's pitched as a 12-kilometre race, but it's for women, non-binary, and trans riders only. So the FLINTA acronym is used here. It starts in Santiago de Compostela. Was that the same start location as TCR last year?
It was, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if it was the exact place where it started, but it's certainly the same city.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty spectacular place, I think, from the photos we saw last year of the TCR.
It follows a free route format, so riders have already been given the controls, and it finishes in southern Spain, so a different start and finish location. Riders have 6 days to ride it. It was pitched as 1,200 kilometers, but Nikki Shaw, who we'll get onto, who I work with, says she couldn't have got her route below 1,300. So riders will be covering over 200 kilometers a day in order to finishing the cutoff.
Yeah, there's some pretty big sort of terrain there as well. So I've ridden. I'm fairly familiar with it, with the area it's riding. It kind of essentially, if you imagine the Portuguese border, it kind of sort of zigzags across between Spain and Portugal, and then finishes in Cordoba in Andalusia. And so the first checkpoint, there's 3 checkpoints and 3 or 4 parkour sections. And so it's running the similar kind of manner as TCR. So the first one is my my Portuguese pronunciation's coming. Bragança is the first checkpoint, and then there's a parkour through the Douro National Park. So the Douro River is the one that runs into Porto, and it's the grape region, the winemaking region. So there's lots of sort of the terraced hills through along the riverbanks, and some pretty big hills sort of just to the sides. So that'd be good. CP2 is then Linhares in Portugal. And then the parkour B is over the Sierra de Estrela, which is actually a bit of a monster climb. It's basically just a random 2,000-meter mountain in the middle of Portugal. And there's kind of a bit of a plateau and some weird like weather stations and telescopes and stuff on top. But it's a long old climb, like at least an hour or so to get up there, probably a bit more. And it can get quite cold. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough parkour. And then the riders head back into Spain with another parkour before CP3 in Guadeloupe. And then another parkour over the Pico. My Spanish is terrible at the moment. I could barely speak English after the weekend, to be honest. And then finally, the race drops down into Cordoba. And if I know Cordoba fairly well, I've been there a few times. There's a pretty fantastic road descent into Cordoba. So if the parkour goes down that's quite a nice reward to finish. Yeah, sounds like a really good route, actually.
Yeah, we'll see what route riders take. The doctor team and I were talking about this, and Nikki was saying that there aren't actually that many options for the route, and we wondered, and this is just speculation, if it's pitched as a free route so that riders have to design their own route and they really get to know the route and the resupplies. But in reality, there's such limited options that we won't see much variety in routes.
Also the terrain as well, and the fact there's a border, because there's not actually that many crossings between Spain and Portugal. So that's going to funnel riders together. And then there's also just we were talking about this earlier for the unknown race. There's some pretty big mountain ranges just randomly in Spain that we don't even realize are there quite often, and there's not always that many ways through them. So I think it's going to I'm sure there'll be kind of choke points or bottlenecks where riders end up kind of routing. But yeah, definitely be interesting to see. And who have we got lining up? Well, we had a quick look through the start list. It's quite impressive, actually. So this is off the back of it was a LostDot TCR 100 riders, wasn't it, last year, that was kind of used to launch this race. And they were trying to get 100 riders to enter the TCR. And didn't quite get 100. I think it had over 100 sign-ups, but not quite 100 starting.
Yeah.
But then fast forward, probably just over 6 months, 135 solo riders and 9 players,
Yeah.
and 10 non-binary riders, that's really impressive, isn't it?
That's massive. It's a testament to how much work and how well pitched it's been. They've also had support from people like Lael Wilcox and Jana and Cynthia, the veterans of TCR, to help market it. So it's done really well. It was ambitious, and I think they've done a really good job.
And it bodes well for kind of the TCR as well, and hitting that 100 women target. And as we kind of said, it's a tough race, it's a tough route, and hopefully this is a good stepping stone into the TCR and other events as well. Who have we got then, Becky?
Well,
names that stand out.
I'll start with my colleague Nikki Shaw. She and I work together at Dot Watcher. She has finishes at the Transcontinental, 2 Volcano Sprint, and a handful of UK races, including All Points North, the Dells Divide, and the Southern Divide races. Nikki's quite a performance-based athlete, so she'll be going for a result. It is her second race back after a big accident a couple of years ago. She was hit by a driver during the Via race in Spain. She had a how do you call it? A rod put in her, oh God, I'm stumbling over body parts now, through her calf. What's the bone at your calf? Tibia?
Tibia or fibia. Can't remember.
So she has really...
Move on quickly.
She has some really cool x-rays from that. And while she had to learn how to walk again, it didn't take her long to get back on a bike. She was cycling before she was walking. And then another rider is Amrai Kuna. She was a TCR bursary rider on the Mike Hall bursary in 2022. She finished 19th overall and second woman behind Fiona, which I think it was her second race at the time, and a rider who had the bursary support, was an extraordinary result. She actually beat Megan Hakkinen. The next rider is Ada Haas. We mentioned her. She came second at the unknown race earlier this year and second woman at the unknown race last year behind Elodie. Anna Richter, it would be one of the favourite non-binary riders. They finished 15th overall at Atlas, and they actually beat Cynthia Carson by 3.5 hours, and Cynthia was first woman. So Anna will be certainly one of the most competitive riders.
That ride in Atlas was very impressive, wasn't it? Super, super strong.
Absolutely. And the next rider is Meg Young. We mentioned about Angus Young earlier in the podcast. Meg is his partner, and she has finished as 6th overall at the Dorset Divide, 15th overall at Dells Divide. She and Angus have done a few things as a pair, and they lined
up, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They lined up at the Tortue Waipounamu earlier this year, down in New Zealand, but she was disqualified for sleeping on private land, which actually 4 of the riders also were. So,
including Angus.
Including Angus.
You could have told her. I was actually interestingly, I was talking to Justinus about it yesterday, and he was saying it's actually quite an easy mistake to make if you didn't know, because the weather was so bad and the terrain so remote down there that the phones just weren't really working and things like that, and you didn't always know when you're on private land and when you weren't. So it's probably telling that it wasn't really the Kiwi riders that made the mistake. It was those travelling in. But yeah, Meg's super strong anyway, and her and Angus have done a lot of touring in South America over winter, so she'll be strong.
And that's it for the wrap-ups and this episode. In the next
That's a long one.
That was like you said, the season's coming thick and fast. There's a lot to talk about. So that's why we're upping the frequency of the podcast. The next one will hopefully be end of May, mid-May time, and we'll wrap up on the races that have happened and preview the Hellenic Mountain Race and the Trans-Balkan Race.
Yep, and of course we've got those bonus episodes, so the recordings that we did at the Bespoke Talks at the weekend. So hopefully there'll be a nice little bonus gift to everyone who's been listening, and hopefully some really interesting conversations there. So look out for those. So I guess that's it for this month. Thank you, Becky, for joining me as always. You're probably fed up of me by this point this week.
I know, it was quite intense over the weekend.
Yeah, there's a lot of talking been going on. So thanks everyone for listening. So look out for those bespoke episodes. Check out the merch, the caps, because I've got a big box of caps. I haven't got that many heads to wear them. Yeah, check out those, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. So see you then.